My teammates discussed some models of ego leadership, and the next model, which I would like to share with you, is appreciative leadership. I would like to invite you to ponder on this Mr. or Miss Universe question. What is your X factor that made the APLP screening committee consider your application favorably? It can be a quality or a character, or perhaps a characteristic or a value or a strength that was evident in your application or during the interview. I want you to keep this question at the back of your mind because we will get back to your answers in a little while. Appreciative leadership shares the conviction that collaboration is more important than authority. The success of each organization depends on combining the strengths of everyone involved. It inspires confidence and it boosts people's energy, enthusiasm, and good performance. Appreciative leadership believes in the power of the ripple effect, that any creative potential by one person can turn into ripples of confidence, energy, enthusiasm, and performance to make a positive difference in the world towards the transformation of potentials into positive strengths. Now, what is the genesis of appreciative leadership? Appreciative leadership is founded on the principles of appreciative inquiry, or what they call AI. AI was originally an organization development intervention discovered by David COOPERRIDER in the early 1980s. It's an OD intervention focused not on the problems, but on what works well in the organization. Cooper Ryder believes that in every piece of art, there is beauty. AI highlights what works well, what gives life, what is inspiring, and what is worth continuing in the organization. So, appreciative leaders do not look for what is missing rather than on what is existing and what is working well. The challenge, however, for us leaders is to be able to wear what they call an appreciative eye. Questions are very powerful. The answers we get are as good as the questions we ask. So, appreciative leaders should ask open ended questions that allow people to tell their stories because each one has a beautiful story that is worth listening to. AI, therefore, is the search for what is life giving and possible within people and the world around us. Why is appreciative leadership significant? In David Cooper Ryder's article, AI in a Broken World, written at the height of the pandemic, he mentioned three levels of appreciative inquiry, and these are AI in the extraordinary, AI in the ordinary, and AI in the midst of tragedy. Now, what is AI in the extraordinary? David Cooper Ryder said it is easier not to appreciate because of a spectacular experience. Like, for example, when you receive the acceptance letter from the APLP or when you get an unexpected promotion. So it's easier to appreciate, right? Now, the second level of AI is AI in the ordinary, wherein it is more difficult to appreciate because of the ordinariness of things or because of the ordinariness of the experience. Like, for example, when you have a new phone, you feel it's really precious to you and you appreciate its use. However, when it becomes older, it becomes too ordinary that you don't get to appreciate its value anymore. Then next is AI in the midst of tragedy. According to David Cooper Ryder, this is the most difficult level of appreciative inquiry because it is when everything seemingly is so dark, everything is so uncertain, and doubts are so real. And the pandemic is a perfect example of this one. So David Cooperrider said that it is in the AI in the midst of tragedy when leaders should utilize appreciative leadership model so that we get to inspire our people, we can provide opportunities, we can build on their strengths, and so that they can thrive. Now, how do we apply appreciative leadership in our own contexts? I propose that we follow the 4D cycle of appreciative inquiry to become pandemic or crisis proof leaders. And these are to discover, to dream, to design, and the last is destiny. And as I discuss each phase, I'll give you an example. You see, I teach health professionals. I teach doctors, nurses, dentists, OTs, PTs, etc. And they are all leaders in their own hospitals and schools or medical schools. And they were all frontliners during the pandemic. So they were not only physically exhausted, but they were emotionally exhausted as well, emotionally and psychologically exhausted. So what I did was to make use of appreciative leadership. So I facilitated an appreciative leadership workshop. The first thing we did was to discover their core. I asked them questions like what gives them life, what inspires them, where is their strength coming from, what made them successful leaders, in spite and despite of the pandemic. And in your case, at this time, I would like you to go back to the very first question I asked you earlier. What is your X factor that made the APLP team choose you? I would like you to recognize that because that is your strength. So what you see on your screen are some sample AI questions for this particular phase. So I enjoin everyone to go through the questions after this lecture so that you can discover your inner strengths. Then the dream phase, building on their strengths, values, skills, and attitudes, the things that they have discovered in the previous phases. I ask them to focus on their wishes, what they want to see in themselves, what they want to see in the world, what they want to see in the students, let's say, for example, 5 or 10 years from now. And then we went to the third phase, which is the design, building on their discovery in the first phase and on the vision that they wanted to achieve. I made them design a blueprint towards the achievement of these dreams. Like, what do they need? What do they need to do? How do they do it? When will they do it? What resources do they need? And then we go to the last phase, which is the destiny, where they are now currently implementing their discovery, their dreams, and design plans to further empower themselves, change something if needed. And I would like to end with this quote from David Cooperrider. All leadership is appreciative leadership. It is the capacity to see the best in us, in the world around us, in our colleagues, and in the groups we are trying to lead.